Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty huge, the surprising comeback of nuclear power. For decades, it's been an industry kinda on the decline. But right now, a perfect storm of skyrocketing energy demand, driven by AI, and some really groundbreaking new tech is putting nuclear firmly back on the global stage. So, let's break it all down.
Okay, so first things first, let's get a handle on the core problem here. And really, it's pretty simple. Our world is absolutely hungry for electricity. We're electrifying everything, from our cars to our factories, and that means our demand for electricity is growing twice as fast as our total energy demand. We are well and truly in a new age of electricity.
And a massive driver of all this new demand is something you're hearing about every single day: AI and the data centers that power it. The amount of computing power you need for these AI models is just unbelievable, and it takes a colossal amount of electricity. And here's the kicker. That power has to be clean, and it has to be on, non-stop, 24/7.
And just to wrap your head around the sheer scale of this, take a look at the US alone. Electricity use from data centers nearly tripled in the last decade. Okay, big jump, right? Well, get this. By 2028, it's projected to triple again. We are not talking about a small bump here. This is a monumental leap that forces us to ask, where on earth are we going to get all that reliable, clean power?
So with that insane level of demand, you're probably thinking, hey, what about nuclear? It seems like a perfect fit, right? Well, it's complicated. The industry has had let's just say, a pretty rough go of it for the last few decades, especially in the West, where the story has been all about aging reactors and very expensive new projects.
Yeah, trying to build new, large-scale nuclear plants in Western countries has become this epic saga of delays and costs just spiraling out of control. You look at a project like Vogtle in the US, the budget more than tripled, and it was over a decade late. But then you look over at China, and it's a totally different story. They're churning out new reactors in about 7 years on average. That's a huge difference.
And that execution gap, it has completely changed who's in the driver's seat for nuclear tech. Seriously, since 2017, it's been all about China and Russia. Over 90%, think about that, over 90% of all new reactors that started construction anywhere in the world use either Chinese or Russian designs. They've basically taken over the global market.
But even with all those struggles in the West, the tide is starting to turn. In fact, you could argue the fundamental case for nuclear is stronger now than it's been in maybe 50 years. So yeah, the stage is definitely being set for a comeback.
So, what gives? Why the sudden change of heart? I mean, after decades of being on the back foot, why is interest in nuclear suddenly at its highest point since the oil crises back in the 1970s? Well, it turns out it's a few huge global pressures all hitting at the exact same time.
You could really call it a perfect storm. First, countries are way more worried about energy security. Second, we have these massive climate targets that require a steady supply of clean power. And third, people are finally realizing that renewables like solar and wind are amazing, but they need a reliable partner to keep the lights on 24/7. And because of all that, you've now got over 40 countries actively saying, yep, we need more nuclear.
And listen, this isn't just a bunch of talk. The money is absolutely pouring in. We're talking $65 billion in global investment in 2023 alone. That's almost double what it was a decade ago. And that cash is going towards keeping old plants running longer and, this is the big one, funding brand new ones. But a lot of this new optimism isn't just about the money or policy. It's about a new kind of technology, an innovation that could potentially solve the very problems that have held nuclear back for so long. I'm talking about small modular reactors, or SMRs. Now, the idea here is actually pretty simple, but it's a total game changer. Instead of these gigantic, one-of-a-kind nuclear plants, think smaller. Think factory-built. They're designed to be mass-produced on an assembly line and then shipped to a site to be put together. It's almost like nuclear Legos. And that shift from a massive construction project to a manufactured product, that's everything.
And the whole promise here is that SMRs can directly attack nuclear's biggest historical weak spots. Because they're smaller and made in a factory, the idea is you can slash those enormous upfront costs, you can build them way faster, and you can reduce the financial risk that has scared off private investors for decades.
And this is where it all comes together, bringing us right back to where we started, powering AI. That steady, reliable, 24/7 power you get from an SMR, it's the perfect match for a power-hungry data center that never, ever sleeps. It's such a good fit that tech giants are already signing agreements to power their future AI infrastructure with dedicated SMRs. We're watching a massive new market being born right in front of us.
Okay, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. This vision of a new nuclear era is exciting for sure, but we've got to be realistic. There are still some massive hurdles to clear. The path forward is not going to be easy.
So what's the catch? I mean, with all the promise of SMRs and all this renewed political will, the path forward is still far from guaranteed. And it really comes down to two major roadblocks: financing the massive scale-up we need and securing a very complex global supply chain.
First, let's talk about the cost, because the numbers here are just mind-boggling. To meet our climate and energy goals, the world would need to invest around $120 billion in nuclear every single year by 2030. That's nearly double today's record levels. Mobilizing that much money is going to be a monumental effort. And even with SMRs on the horizon, these projects are still a really tough sell for investors. Think about it. You have to put up a ton of capital upfront, you still have long wait times, and any risk of delays can push your break-even point out by 20 or even 30 years. Overcoming that financial barrier is absolutely paramount.
The second major hurdle is the supply chain for nuclear fuel. And this is a big one, because it's dangerously concentrated. Just get a load of this. Russia alone controls 40% of the world's entire uranium enrichment capacity. 40%! That creates a huge geopolitical risk for any country looking to build more reactors. And it really highlights the urgent need to build more secure, diverse supply chains.
So ultimately, the big takeaway from the International Energy Agency is clear. The foundations for a nuclear comeback are in place. The momentum is real, but, and this is a big but, turning that potential into reality is going to take a massive, coordinated effort from governments to make investment less risky and from the industry to actually deliver these new projects on time and on budget. Which leaves us with one last, really fascinating question. We're at this unique crossroads where the urgent, tangible demand for power from the AI revolution is meeting a wave of nuclear innovation designed to solve the very problems that held it back in the past. So, will this powerful combination finally be enough to usher in a true new era for nuclear energy?